This is the post-test review packet. The post-test is tomorrow. It looks like this packet. So here we go. Question number 1 says divide ignoring the remainder. So because this is a linear term back here that we're dividing by, we find the 0 and do synthetic. If you want to do long division, you can. And you put the coefficients across the top. Bring down the first one, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. I don't know, I think that's right, but it doesn't really matter because it says ignoring the remainder. So the quotient, you start at the back, that's a constant term, then you put in an x and an x squared. So you get x squared minus 10x plus 44. You really shouldn't write y equals because there's no y anywhere else in this question. Question number 2. This is factored form, so you set each one of these factors equal to 0. So you get x equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0 becomes x equals 2. Or the 0 is at 2, I guess I should just write. And x plus 8 equals 0 means there's a 0 at negative 8. This has a power of 1, this has a power of 1, but this has a power of 3, so you write multiplicity 3. Okay. Then if you were to FOIL this all out, you'd get an x cubed times another x, so you'd have an x to the 5th with a leading coefficient of just a 1. So the shape would be this. If you graph it, you're going to spend way too much time finding a window that will help you see that shape. But the left end is down. Left means x is negative when y is negative. So you write x approaches negative infinity, then y will also approach negative infinity. It's going down on the left. To say up on the right, when the x's are positive, the y's are positive. All right, that's the end behavior. It doesn't mean it's happening everywhere in between, but out on the ends. Number 3, the degree, the highest exponent is 4, so there are 4 possible real zeros. Don't graph it. I don't want to know how many there really are. I want possible. And turning points is degree minus 1, so it's 3. That's it. Move on. Number 4 had a typo. This was supposed to be an x to the 4th. So then the factored form would be to take out an x squared. That's a 4, sorry. And then it factors further as x minus 5 and x plus 1. So the zeros are at 0. Multiplicity 2, because there's a power of 2, but it didn't ask that, and 5 and negative 1. Number 5, find the value at 0. You're going to have to graph this anyway, so I spent a little time typing it in to y1 and finding a window, and it took me a little while to find a window that worked. My window ended up being negative 10 to 10 for x. And for y, I have negative 200 to 1,000. It doesn't ask what an appropriate window is, so just so that you can find the values, to plug in, for part A, you put in a 0. So you could just do 0 plus 5. You could do this in the home screen. Okay? Or you can, if you've graphed it, you can just go trace 0. And it'll tell you 270. All right. Then it says find the local maximum value. So you need to do max, which is second trace, choice 4. And I just told it somewhere between negative 10 and 0 is where I found it because that was on the left side of my screen, but you can trace around and find it. But eventually it should say on your screen maximum, and then you write the ordered pair rounded to the nearest hundredth, which is just -3/864. I don't know if it comes out nice on the quiz or not, the test. Okay, so the graph looks like this. It is increasing or going up here. Okay, these values. I'm supposed to give the x interval there. Well, these are x is coming from the far left until we hit this x value, which was -3. So the x's are from the left until you hit -3, or -infinity to -3. I know I'm going kind of quick. You can pause anytime, but I have to get this recorded. Okay? To find vertical asymptotes, you set the denominator equal to 0. You should always factor these kind of questions anyway, because if it had a hole, it would not be a vertical asymptote. This has no common factor top and bottom. If you set the denominator equal to 0, you get x equals 1 and x equals -1, and those are the two vertical asymptotes. You will have the reference sheet. Okay? Number 7. It says put G into F, but I always just put the 7 into G. So if I put a 7 in here, I get 21 plus 1 over 2, or 22 over 2 is 11. And then I'm going to put that answer back in, so I would have F of 11 would be 11 squared plus 1, which is 121 plus 1, or 122. Number 8, list all the possible. Do not graph and find the zeros yet. It wants all the possible candidates. So it's plus or minus the factors of the constant, which is the number without an x, over plus or minus the leading coefficient. So the factors of -4 over +3. Well, things that make 4 are 1, 2, and 4. Things that make 3 are 1 and 3. So to write them all out, I say 1 over 1, 2 over 1, 4 over 1, which would be 1, 2, and 4. Then I put 1 over 3, 2 over 3, and 4 over 3. There's the list. That's it. Now, to find part number 9, if you graph it, you can do trace and type all these in. To see which ones work. See, on number 9 right here it says graph and confirm. Well, if you graph this, I'm going to take a second to type it back in. Okay, if I start with a standard window of Zoom 6, actually, I can see the zeros, so a Zoom 6 is okay. I can tell it's crossing at -2 and 2. Then I could check from the last question. Okay, back here it said the only ones between 1 and -1 and 0 would be 1/3 or 2/3 negative. So if I looked back at my list, it looks like one of those is going to work because it's crossing somewhere between 0 and -1. It says I'm supposed to confirm, so you could write down that I did trace 0 and found them all, but I highly suggest you do the division. I'm going to do -2 first. It doesn't matter which one you do first. What matters is that at the end it should be 0. Multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, and get 0. Then when you go to do the other 0, you use it again in the same depressed polynomial. You use your answer from the last part. So when I bring this down and I multiply, add, this is my last factor, guys. That goes here. 3x plus 1. And then these two give me x minus 2 and x plus 2. or that other order, I guess, if I'm going to leave them up there. And this tells me that the third one was negative 1/3. So I write I used successive division. You could even write I used my calculator, graphed it, did trace, and typed in all the possibilities. Okay. Now, someone is going to write x minus 2, x plus 2, and x plus 1/3. That's not right unless you put the leading coefficient back out here. Okay? It even says here, watch your leading coefficient. It's got to be a 3 in there somewhere. All right, moving on. All right, you're going to have a sheet that says the behavior and behavior rules, but this function, the numerator, has degree 3. The denominator has degree 1. So it is top heavy. So it says, I think that's like case 3 on your sheet, but it says to divide and ignore the remainder. So that's the explanation. You can divide. Now this one's tricky. There's no x squared in here, or there's no x, I mean, so you have to put the 0 in. So I bring down, you can do synthetic if you want, but because it's a linear term in the denominator, you don't have to. Multiply, now these numbers get really big, and I'll probably make a mistake here. But we get to ignore the remainder anyway. That's the remainder. So this is the end behavior. It says equation. That means, and it shows it on the sheet, it's y equals. And this gets an x, and this gets an x squared. So it's y equals 4x squared minus 15x plus 45. All right, number 11. You can do by hand, you could use a matrix, anything you want. If I do it really fast by hand, I'll probably get it wrong, but I would have 10x minus 14y equals 102, 21x plus 4y equals 84, which is 31x equals 186, x equals 6. So put the 6 in, I plug the 6 back in up here. Get 18 plus 2y equals 12, 2y equals negative 6, y equals negative 3. I could have put it all in a matrix. And done RREF. And it should say 1, 0, 0, 1, 6, negative 3. Okay, I hope I did that one right. I'm skipping on because I think you guys are good at these. Okay, number 12. Properties would be to divide first, and then to exponentiate, or to rewrite this as 2 to the 8th equals x. So then the answer is 2 to the 8th power is 256. Number 13, you have to use substitution, guys. There's no shortcut. You can't decide to square root this. It doesn't work. So you get x equals y plus 6. I'm going to put that in here. So it'll say y plus 6 squared plus 2y squared equals 27. If I square this, remember you have to FOIL it all out. Add like terms, and get it equal to 0. Yikes. Okay, 3y, only factors 3y and y. 11 factors only 11 and 1. Is this not working? Oh, 36 minus 27 is 9 on a good day. Alright, so now my factors of 9 are 9 and 1 or 3 and 3. Oh, I could divide out a 3. Alright, if I take out a 3 here, I'll have y squared plus 4y plus 3, which will then factor y plus 3, y plus 1. So I get y equals negative 3 or y equals negative 1. So I have two ordered pairs, one with a y value of negative 3 and one with a y value of negative 1. Then up at the top it said x equals y plus 6 right here. So if I put this in here, negative 3 plus 6 is 3. If I put in a negative 1, negative 1 plus 6 is 5. Alright, if I try squaring those and multiply, I'd get 9. 2 times this would be, after I squared it, 2y squared would be 18. 9 and 18 add up to 27. Square this, I get 25. Square this, I get 1. 25 plus 2 times 1 is 27, so they work. Alright, matrix multiplication. The part everybody got wrong on the test is they did not put the x, y, z here. The answers go here. 1, 3, negative 1, 3, negative 1, 1, 4, 1, negative 2. Now what you're supposed to do for this question is go into matrix and put in matrix A the square matrix, which is a 3 by 3, and it should be 1, 3, negative 1, 3, negative 1, 1, 4, 1, negative 2. Quit out of that, go back into matrix, over to edit, down to the B, and make this one a 3 by 1, which is the answer matrix, which would have 10, 8, and 23. And then you're supposed to quit, go to the home screen, put the name of matrix A, then hit that same button again to get inverse, times the name of matrix B, and you get 4, 1, negative 3. I won't know the difference. If you put it in as matrix A is a 3 by 4, and you put in the same matrix, except at the end over here you put the answers. So you put it all into one matrix, and then you went to the home screen and did matrix math, up and find RREF, and tell it to take the RREF of matrix 1, which now you have everything in. You get the same answer, 4, 1, negative 3. Okay, so I won't know how you did it, just so you know how to write it as an inverse question or as matrix multiplication. All right, you can do this question two ways. It doesn't factor, so my suggestion is you would do quadratic, which you do have to have memorized. So the opposite of negative 6 would be 6 plus or minus. You'd have negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 11 over 2 times 1, which is 6 plus or minus. When you square this, you have to get a positive. A minus, a negative would become plus 44 over 2, which is 6 plus or minus the square root of 80 over 2. 6 plus or minus 80 is 16 times 5. which is 4 square roots of 5. Now, over 2, remember, you cannot divide one without dividing the other, so you get 3 plus or minus 2 square roots of 5. Because this was an even b value, it's also a good candidate for completing the square. If you had done completing the square, put the blanks in, and then take half of the 6. Squared is 9, add that to both sides, and then you can square root both sides, and you get x equals 3 plus or minus 2 square roots of 5, which is the same thing. All right, works best if b is an even number. All right, moving on to 16. This is a graphing question. You're going to put in negative 16x squared plus 80x. I think it's plus 22. Double check here. Yep. Then you need to find an appropriate window for this situation, it says. Well, x is time, which is positive only. So I'm going to try 10 seconds, okay? Now I have some crazy window in there that isn't really working for me, but the 10 seconds works. If you graphed that on your screen, I would count it wrong. Because height is the second part of this, and you can't have negative height. So if I go 0 to 300, it would show up. I'm going to try 0 to 100. I don't think it actually works. I think it goes off the top. Okay, so I'm going to make this 150. The scale really doesn't matter. It's what you're counting by. But this is an appropriate window for this situation because you can't really have negative time or negative height. So up here you're going to write 0 to 10 for your x, and your y is 0 to 150, and your graph should look like this. Then it says, what is the height? What time does it hit the ground? So you want to go second trace, find the 0, which is choice 2. It's somewhere between 5 and 6 seconds, so I type those in as my left bound and right bound, or you can scroll around. And it comes out 5.26, but it says round to the nearest tenth of a second, so you have to write 5.3 seconds. Then it says, when is it above 100 feet? I'm going to go into Y2 and put the line through at 100. And then I'm going to find those 2 intersection points. Now, this is kind of picky, and I probably won't be that picky when I'm grading it. But if you find these intersection points, this one is at 3.67. If I actually type in 3.7, it says, when is it strictly above 100? If I put in 3.7, oops, and I'm on the parabola, I get 98.9. I'm not above 100. So it really should be at 3.6. Okay, but if you rounded, you'd get 3.7. I'm probably not going to be that picky. But so at 3.6, whoops, it was above. The other 0 is somewhere around 1 second over there. It's the intersection point, not the 0. If I type in my guess as 1, it says it's at 1.327. If I put in 1.3, I got to go up arrow here, so I'm on the parabola. It's at 98.9 seconds. It's really not above. You'd have to go to 1.4, and then it's at 102. I really don't care if you put 1.3, but strictly speaking, it's above when those are the tenths that you would try. All right, average rate of change. This is worth a huge number of points, guys. This one little part. It is the slope, okay? So you say at 3 seconds, and you plug it into the equation. If you just look at the graph, and you go trace 3, it's 118 feet, and then it asks where you are at 5, and it's 22. 3 seconds, 118 feet, 5 seconds, 22 feet. And then you find the slope. And that's all the explanation you need to write, or you can write change in height over change in time. But 118 minus 22 over 3 minus 5 gives me 98 over negative 96 over negative 2, which is negative 48. So you have to write either it's falling 48 feet per second, or you can write negative 48 feet per second. But you get like a point for the label, a point for the negative, a point for the 48, and a point for some kind of an explanation. Number 17 is tricky because it doesn't start with a parent function. It already has a shift. So the parent function is f of x equals x cubed, or you could just write x cubed there. A vertical stretch multiplies the function by 2. So you would have 2 times x cubed minus 4, which is going to give you 2x cubed minus 8. Then a horizontal shift to the right, and that's supposed to say 5 units. To the right is minus 3 inside. So you take this function and you say I'm going to shift it to the right 3 inside. That's all you have to do. A vertical shift of down 2 takes the function that you have and goes minus 2. So if I take the function that I have right here and I add a minus 2, I get 2x minus 3 cubed minus 10. And that's the answer. Okay. Most of you would have gotten 2x minus 3, I hope, cubed. And the minus 2 is the shift down 2. But remember, it was already at negative 4. So some of you might have got a 6. But that's still not right because the stretch first stretched the whole thing, okay? So be careful. If you get this, you get most of the credit, but not all. Number 18 is a tricky one. You have to do the inverse, which is flip the x and the y. Okay, then you kind of cross multiply here, or multiply the y minus 3 over onto the other side. You are eventually needing to isolate the y again. Isolate the y again, okay? So you're going to have to factor, but first you got to get all the y's together. So you get x, y minus 3x equals 5y plus 1. If I subtract 5y onto this side, I have xy minus 3x minus 5y equals 1. And I got to add the 3x back over here so that all the y's are isolated. Then I take out the y so that I have a y in only one place. Then I'm going to divide by this quantity. So the answer is y equals 1 plus 3x, or 3x plus 1, over x minus 5. Those are tricky. All right, this problem has a typo. This is just supposed to be a 2 at the back. So the rules of exponents would say that I can rewrite the addition as multiplication as a single log. So it would be log base 5 of x times 6 equals 2. And then I can exponentiate. Or rewrite with a 5 here on each side. So this becomes just x times 6, or 6x, equals 5 squared. So the answer is 25 over 6. Okay. Two ways to do this question. We've had this since the beginning of the year. This is basically asking you to find the equation of the line through those 2 points. So you need to find the slope and then use point slope maybe. So if I find the slope, it's change in y over change in x is 1/4. If I plug that in here with maybe the 10/8, if I distribute, I have y minus 10 equals 1/4, x minus 8 times a 4th is 2. Add the 10 to both sides, and I get 1/4 x plus 8. Now, if I have, this is the answer. I could have also used slope-intercept form to do that, but there's a little cheat here, guys. If you put 8 and 4 in as the x values in list 1, and into list 2 you put 10 and 9, you could do stat, right arrow, down to choice 4, which is line of regression, and enter, and it will give you, it'll say y equals ax plus b, where a is 0.25 and b is 8. So it's telling you this is 1/4 x plus 8. Just a little cheat there. Feel free to use it. All right, number 21. ln is base e. So basically all we need to do is exponentiate both sides, and we'll have e to the y equals e and ln of e go away, cancel each other out, whatever you want to say. And then we're trying to get x by itself. So we have e to the y plus d equals x. All right, this is basic exponential growth. So it says we're starting with 246 mice. They are growing, it's 1 plus the growth rate times the original to the time. So it's 0.11 to the x, where x stands for years. So then if we put in a 7, we type 246, 1 plus 0.11 to the 7, or just 1.11 to the 7. We get 510 or 511, doesn't say, it says to the nearest whole number. Yes, it does. Actually, it says nearest, so the nearest is 511. Number 23, you guys are pretty good at these, but cupcakes and cookies. So sells 3 for every cupcake and 2 for every cookie and makes $44. But then it says she sold 3 times as many cupcakes as cookies. So the number of cupcakes is actually 3 times the cookies, I think. Let me read that again. 3 times as many cupcakes. Yes, so cupcakes is 3 times the cookies. So if you wanted to just do a substitution, you could rearrange it into a matrix, but if you wanted to just put this in here, you'd have 3 times 3y plus 2y equals 44. This would be 9y plus 2y, 11y. So she sold 4 cookies. And then if I plug that back in here, I did times 3, I would get 12 cupcakes, which is indeed 3 times as many. And if you were checking it, you'd go 3 times 4 plus 2 times 12 equals 44. This is 12 plus 24 equals 34. What did I do wrong? Oh, I put these in backwards. Okay, that should be 12 and 4. So this is 36 and 8 is 44. Okay. She sold 12 cupcakes and 4 cookies. All right. The zeros of this function, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and there's a bounce. It crosses at 0 and it crosses at 2. So the zeros are at -5, multiplicity 2, 0, and 2. Multiplicity is even, or 2, because of the bounce. Or you could say, because it doesn't cross, it only hits the x-axis. All right, so then our factors are x plus 5, multiplicity 2, don't forget. X minus 0, or you can just put an x out in the front, x minus 2. To find the k value, we have to go back up here where it said put in x equals -2, y equals -288. To find the k that's out here. So if I do that, I'll have -288 equals k times -2 plus 5 squared times -2 minus 0 times -2 minus 2. This is all multiplied, so I have -288 equals k times 3 squared, or 9, times -2 times -4. -288 equals k times 9 times 8, or 72. So if I take -288 divided by 72, I get -4. So there is a -4 out here. Now if I graph this equation, okay, it should have zeros at those 3 places, and when I put in a -2, I should get out a -288. All right, as long as these 2 numbers are the same, this is yes, and the other 2 numbers tell you the size. This says just rewrite the matrix. It would be 1, -5, -1, 2, -11. It says we want to do RREF, so that means you put it all in one matrix. This is supposed to be a W, my bad. Okay. That's all it asks you to do. Number 27, this would be original times the rate to the time, etc. It says if 47 amoeba are introduced, they are doubling every hour, so 2 to the x, or t. We want it to become 17,500. Remember, you have to divide by the 47 first. Which is a nice, disgusting number. I'm just going to leave it. Because then I'm going to take the log of both sides, whatever kind of log you want, whatever base. This comes out in front. So I end up typing the log of 17,500 over 47. And then I'm going to have to divide that by the log of 2. Got 8.54. Nearest tenth of an hour is 8.5. I'm a little concerned. If I put 8.5 back in here, am I going to be over? Yes. Okay. So this is 8.5. If I plug 8.5 back in here, I get 1,007. No, I'm not over. I want to be over 500. Okay, I lied. I've got to change this to 8.6. Hopefully it comes out better on the test. But so if I do 47 times 2 to the 8.6, I have 17,237.1 minus, 18,000 minus 17,500, because it says how much over that are there. There's 737 extra amoebas. Okay, hopefully it doesn't come out like that on the test, but if it doesn't come out down here when you plug it back in, then you got to go up and round this one up 1 more tenth. All right, 28 is if you've been delivered something and you want the new inventory, you just add. Oh, what's 87 and 44, guys? 131. Okay, that's the new inventory matrix. To something, grow something, 12% would be all plus 12%, or 1.12. So if I multiply every one of those by 1.12 and round to the nearest tenth, I get $4.40. $5.60, 167, and 10.07. Round to the nearest cent. Okay, last question. If this is reduced row echelon form, a row of zeros means many solutions. The first one says x plus 4z equals -9. I'm recording. Y plus 7z equals 3. I have to say z equals any number. To get the y by itself here, so that it says y equals 3 minus 7z, because I want everything in terms of z. And this would be x equals -9 minus 4z. Okay, so this is the choice we should be looking for where it says this. Part of it is multiple choice on that question.